I have an Nvidia RTX 4090. I have an AMD Ryzen 7800X 3D. And to top it all off, my gaming PC is connected to an LG OLED TV that is 4K and maxes out at 120 Hz. All of this technology truly is incredible, and I thoroughly enjoy it every weekend when I log online to play games with my best friend. I got no complaints. However, lately, for some weird reason, I've been very nostalgic for the days of old. I've been thinking about Blockbuster. I've been thinking about midnight releases. I've been thinking about the Xbox 360. And even though that the hardware and the technology and the graphics and the resolution and the frame rate and the mods and all the things are better today in virtually every possible way, there is something about the simplicity of the old days that I really just kind of miss, and I really just want to talk about that in today's video. Hi, this is E-Rock on Tech, and this is not my normal type of content. I am a PC hardware reviewer, a PC builder, and a PC gamer. That is what this channel is about. So if you're new here and if you're expecting regular console content, I'm not the creator for you, but thank you for stopping by, and at least I hope you can enjoy this video. And if you are a regular viewer, first of all, thank you very much. And secondly, I hope you can also enjoy this video, but if it's not for you, I understand. Bear with me, and I promise on my next upload, we will be back to the normal PC type of content. Thank you. Okay, so why do I miss the days of the Xbox 360 so much? Well, the reality is it has very little to do with the physical hardware itself, the 360, and more so to do about the time period and just the general gaming industry at that time and just the way things were around that time. You see, a lot of what I'm about to say can equally be applied to people who played on the PlayStation 3. For me, I played mostly on the 360. I dabbled in the PS3, but the majority of that generation for me was all about the Xbox 360. And so that's the viewpoint that I'm viewing this through. And there are some things I'll talk about in this video that truly were just about the 360. So here we go. Number one, I really miss midnight releases. You see, back then, most games were actually sold physically, not digitally, the exact opposite of what you see today in 2024. Back then, most people would physically go to a store, mostly like GameStop, and they would pick up their games. And you see, this is what a midnight release was. You would go to GameStop and pre-order a game, typically for $5, and then you would come back the night before that game was scheduled to go live or be released to the public, and you would stand in line, and then around midnight, GameStop would then officially sell you the game. And then you could go home and technically be one of the first people in the world playing that game as soon as it possibly was available to be played. And that was a pretty cool feeling. Also, midnight releases were also really cool in the fact that a lot of them had DJs, they had food trucks, they had tournaments where you could enter, and if you won, you could get a gift card or you could get a free copy of that game. You would stand in line with people and just kind of share your gaming stories and maybe exchange phone numbers or exchange gamer tags, and then go home and play with the person you just met in line. Midnight releases were so cool because they were events. They were something to go and do. They got you out of the house. Now, don't get it twisted. Midnight releases were also a chore. They were not necessarily convenient. I mean, you had to get in your car and physically drive somewhere. And when big blockbuster games come out, it's typically the holidays. You know, you're talking November, December, that time frame. So it's starting to get pretty cold outside at that time. And so you're standing outside, it's cold, and you're waiting in line. And yeah, you had to drive there to get it. So it's not as convenient as digital, but that's also part of the charm. That is part of the experience. I remember being in line at the Halo 3 midnight release, and this was at Arbor Place Mall in Douglasville, Georgia. And it was a GameStop inside of the mall, and this line, man, this line had to be like 500 people deep minimum. And I remember being in line next to a father and his son, and he said, yeah, I bought us 2 Xbox 360s and 2 copies of Halo 3, and I'm gonna let him stay home from school tomorrow, and we're gonna stay up all night and play the Halo 3 campaign. And I remember thinking, wow, I wish I could have something like that with my father. And unfortunately, I couldn't. But I said, you know what? One day, I'm gonna do that with my son. And unfortunately, my son is 5 years old now, and midnight releases are pretty much a thing of the past. And that kind of breaks my heart because I don't really know what our thing is gonna be, but I know we'll figure it out. But yeah, I definitely miss midnight releases. Next up, I got to talk about the actual games from that time period, right? I think overall the games back then were better. And what I mean by that is, sure, graphically speaking, resolution speaking, frame rate speaking, no, they weren't better. From a technological standpoint, they were not better, but they were better in the sense that developers actually seemed to care a little bit more. Publishers seemed to care a little bit more. And what I mean by that is you paid $60 for a game. Sure, that seemed expensive at the time, but you got the full game. Let me say that again. You got the full game. You did not go home and get blasted in the face with a bunch of microtransactions and battle passes and season passes and all these other things. You just got the game. You got the game. You got the full, complete, beginning to end game. And some games, not even all games, some games would then have optional DLC that was typically $10 to $15. I remember the Halo 3 DLCs were all around $10, and the Call of Duty DLCs were always around $15. Very respectable and also optional. That is completely opposite to what we have today. Also, not to mention all the games were on a physical disc. So A, you actually own the game, and B, you would actually put the game in your disk drive and it would just load. It would boot up. It would just work. You didn't have a 150 gigabyte day one patch where you just sat there twiddling your thumbs wondering when you could actually play this game. You just got to play the game. It was truly phenomenal. And then when you start talking about the quality of the games, I mean, when I think about the Xbox 360, you had the entire Gears of War trilogy, and Gears of War was just absolutely incredible on so many levels. And then of course you had Halo 3 ODST, Halo Reach, and even there towards the very end of the Xbox 360's life cycle, you ended up getting Halo 4. And there was just so many games to choose from. You had Fable 2 and Fable 3, and then obviously everybody had Skyrim, and then you had Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which basically took the world by storm and introduced the world's most toxic lobbies. I don't think any millennial today would trade that for the world, but the new generation probably couldn't hang in those lobbies. And then you had the Battlefield franchise, and then you had the Crysis franchise, and then you had the Batman Arkham games. To this day, the Batman Arkham games are hands down some of my favorite video games of all time. I still play those games even today in 2024. Those games were truly phenomenal. And so the list goes on and on. I could keep listing off games, but I won't for the sake of the time of this video. But I felt like back then there was always something to play, and there were always people to play those games with, because everybody in my circle had an Xbox 360, and then they had friends who had 360s, and then those friends had friends who had 360s. You just always had a squad. You always had people to just run games with. It was such a good time to be alive. I remember these games coming out. You would pre-order it, go to the midnight release, have a phenomenal time with all of your friends, come home, pop the game in. It would just work. You had the full game there, no microtransactions, and the games were just super high quality and a ton of fun. Things unfortunately have truly changed so much, and I really do miss the old model. I really do. I don't necessarily want to go back to console. I don't necessarily want PC gamers to have physical games again or whatever. I would like to pay $60 for a game and get the full game. I think that would be amazing. I would even settle for paying $70 as long as I got the full game. I really miss the days of old. I do. Call me a boomer, but if you weren't there, I think you really missed out. Another cool thing about that time period was that you actually had a reason to go and buy strategy guides, because back then you didn't necessarily have YouTube like you do today. You couldn't just go to YouTube and say how to do X in this video game. It was, hey, I'm gonna figure this out on my own, or I'm gonna go buy a strategy guide from the grocery store down the street, or from, you know, Walmart or GameStop or whatever. In fact, my wife and I, we actually spent one of our early dates playing Fable 2 on the Xbox 360, and I was going around collecting all the gargoyles, and she had the strategy guide, and she said, go over here, there's one over here. And as I would get the gargoyles, she would mark off the gargoyles inside the strategy guide. And oh my goodness, would you look at that? Here it is. I found it. This is the official guide. This is the exact guide that my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, went through and physically marked off the gargoyle locations as I was playing, and I think some of the markings are still in here. And as I was digging this out from my closet, I actually found a few other strategy guides. I think I have one for Assassin's Creed 2 as well. But I mean, yeah, these things were just so cool because they're physical representations of the game, their actual artwork. The artwork inside of these things is just phenomenal. And basically I'm holding a collector's item in my hand now because you can't get this anymore. It even has the original sticker on it, which is $19.99, so I guess I paid 20 bucks for it, but definitely worth it. I mean, absolutely worth it. Speaking of artwork, games used to have artwork inside the cases. Do you remember that? You used to go and buy a game and there would be a manual on the inside, and that manual would tell you everything about the game, but also sometimes it would come with a map. Like I think Oblivion and Skyrim, I think those games actually came with a map if memory serves me correctly. So yeah, just so much has changed over the last 15 years or so, you know, 10 years, 15 years or whatever. And it's just crazy to look back on it and see how far we've come. Now, something else that was just incredible about that time period was the fact that when something went down in the gaming industry, it was a big deal. For example, when the original Xbox was revealed, Bill Gates brought out The Rock on stage. Well, with the Xbox 360, they had a launch party in the Mojave Desert, and G4 covered it. And today you can still find those videos on YouTube. And it's just crazy that Microsoft put all this money into big release parties for the console. And then when Halo 3 came out, that broke records across the board. Halo 3 was the stuff. I saw a video where I think Ludacris was getting a copy of it, so celebrities were coming out, buying the games and getting excited to play the games, and you had multiple launch parties all over the US and even in Australia, I think, and it was just crazy. And again, to really hammer this home, Halo 3 was absolutely gigantic. When Halo 3 came out, it broke a ton of records, and not to mention, you had all these launch parties and people showing up in Master Chief costumes, people driving around real life warthogs. I mean, just the time was just crazy, all over a video game. And I really miss those days, and I just think about them and I'm like, man, take me back, right? Now, another cool thing about that time period was that you had all these different iterations of the Xbox 360. Because Microsoft was really investing in that console. And so every time you turned around, it seemed like, oh, look, a new improvement, a new improvement, a new improvement. Things were getting progressively better. Now, look, I get it. Some of that had to do with the fact that the original Xbox 360 had the red ring of death. Mine had it 2 different times. But here's the thing. Number one, Microsoft ate all the cost on that and said, look, our bad, we'll fix it for free. And whenever they fixed it, they also typically handed out free trials for Xbox Live. On both occasions, when I got my Xbox back, it had an Xbox Live card on the top of it for 1 month. So that was pretty cool. And that's also something you don't see a lot these days. A lot of times these days, whenever a hardware defect goes out, a lot of times companies, they want to try to play it off, they want to deny it. And unfortunately, we've seen that recently in the PC industry multiple times. It's not a good look. And so that was really cool of Microsoft to do that. In addition to that, though, you really just got some really cool upgrades. I mean, you went from the basic Xbox 360 to the Xbox 360 Elite to the Xbox 360 Slim to a bunch of different custom themed Xboxes all in between. So you had a custom Halo Xbox, you had the Gears of War Xbox, you had the Star Wars Xbox. And not only did you have really cool artwork all over these Xbox 360s, but you also had custom sound effects. My best friend still has that Gears of War Xbox 360, and that thing is so cool. The sound effects on that thing is just so awesome. And again, it's just one of those things I feel like you don't really overly see too much anymore. PlayStation and Xbox have done a couple of custom consoles the last 10 years or so, but on the Xbox side of things, it's really gotten bad because they typically don't sell it. They put it into a contest and call it a giveaway, and you have like a 1 in 5 billion chance of winning it. So that's kind of lame. It was a lot cooler when you could just go and say, hey, I want that, and you bought it, you know? I mean, that was pretty cool. Now, in addition to that, the Xbox 360 also got a bunch of software updates. You know, we started out with the Xbox Blades dashboard, and then we went to the new Xbox experience, aka NXE, and then we went to that Connect dashboard for a brief minute, and then finally we landed on the Metro dashboard for the final dashboard of the Xbox 360. And so it felt like Xbox was constantly keeping it fresh and switching things up. And sure, some people prefer the older dashboards, but the newer dashboards also had some welcoming changes that added new features and enhancements. And so a little bit of give and take. But you know, it really felt like Xbox was constantly trying to innovate and keep things fresh and keep you on your toes. And it felt like they were really trying to make a name for themselves. And after the 360 generation, I really feel like a lot of things in the gaming industry just went downhill. Okay, look, I can keep talking and talking about this, but I don't want to end up with a 45-minute video, and I'm sure my editor would appreciate that. So I'm going to wrap it up with this right here. One final thing that I really miss about the Xbox 360 days is just the simple fact that nobody, and I mean nobody, ever talked about FPS, aka frames per second. Nobody ever talked about upscaling and, oh, is that native 4K or are you using upscaling? And you didn't deal with that. It was just all about the games. It was all about the games. Hey man, did you pre-order XYZ? Hey man, what game are you looking forward to? Hey man, are you going to the midnight release tonight? Hey, you guys want to come over and, you know, set up a bunch of consoles in a living room and, you know, we all play Halo customs tonight or whatever? That is what it was all about. The conversation was never, ever about anything remotely technical at all. It wasn't until the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 where you had to install games to the hard drive, and then on top of that you still had a day one patch, and then on top of all of that you still didn't get the full game working properly on day one. How many broken releases have we had since 2013 when the PS4 and the Xbox One came out? How many games have launched in a completely broken and buggy state? And now you have YouTubers like me. Hey guys, this is what your hardware can do on this game. This is how many frames per second you're getting with these settings. And then you have YouTubers like Digital Foundry. Well, the Xbox is doing this, but the PlayStation's doing that. And now everybody gets all caught up in the technicalities of everything. And on one hand, I love that stuff. That's why I do it. It's fun and it's intriguing and you learn a lot and you get to really nerd out. But on the other hand, I really miss being ignorant because ignorance is truly bliss. And yeah, I just miss the good old days. The Xbox 360 is my favorite gaming console of all time. I truly miss that era, but I fully recognize those days are long gone and they're never coming back. It is 2024. I'm happily a PC gamer now, and I do honestly believe that PC is the best place to play your games, but I fully understand why people still choose a console. I totally get it. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your favorite gaming memories? It could be from the 360, it could be from the PS3, it could be older, it could be newer. Let's just talk, keep it all positive, keep the toxicity and console wars and platform wars and fanboy stuff all out of the comment section. Let's just keep this one positive. All right. Thank you for being here. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, E-Rock out.